step aboard the Mary Celeste on December 5th, 1872, and you would see a table set for breakfast. A half-empty vial of sewing oil standing upright, and a cargo of industrial alcohol completely intact, but not a single living soul left on board. The Atlantic Ocean does not just swallow ships, sometimes it hollows them out. Before it became the most enduring ghost story in maritime history, the Mary Celeste was a proud, two-masted brigantine cutting through the bitter winter waves of the North Atlantic. It was a vessel born under a dark star, originally named the Amazon, carrying a history of collisions, fires, and the sudden death of its very first captain. Yet, on this fateful voyage from New York to Genoa, she was commanded by Benjamin Briggs, a man of iron discipline and deep religious faith, who brought along his wife, Sarah, and 32-year-old daughter, Sophia. They left port with a crew of 7 experienced super sailors and a massive cargo of 1,701 barrels of commercial alcohol. Everything seemed perfectly routine, but weeks later, when another merchant ship spotted her drifting aimlessly between the Azores and Portugal, the reality of what lay inside her wooden hull would challenge human logic for more than a century. This was a tragedy stripped of violence, a crime scene with no evidence of a crime, a locked-room mystery on a global scale. Everything changed when the boarding party stepped onto the damp, creaking deck and realized that an entire family and their crew had simply vanished into thin air, leaving their world completely frozen in time. The Atlantic in late November is a hostile wilderness of grey, churning water and howling winds. To understand the terror that took place, one must look at the physical reality of life aboard a 19th century merchant vessel. The air inside the captain's corridors smelled of a damp wool, beeswax, and the faint, sweet scent of Sarah Briggs's rosewater. The weight of the ship groaned constantly, a rhythmic, deep-pitched sound that synchronized with the relentless slamming of the waves against the bow. For the first week of the voyage, the weather was mercifully cooperative. Captain Briggs maintained the meticulous logbook, his fountain pen scratching neat, elegant lines of ink onto heavy paper, recording wind speeds, coordinates, and the mundane details of daily navigation. The crew shifted in a well-oiled routine, their heavy boots tramping across the deck, their hands calloused from pulling freezing, salt-encrusted ropes. In the galley, the cook prepared hot stews, the steam rising into the cold air, fighting off the pervasive chill of the ocean. Below them, tucked deep within the dark belly of the hold, sat the cargo, hundreds of heavy oak barrels containing denatured alcohol, silent and heavily secured. It was a valuable shipment, meant for fortified Italian wines, and Briggs knew that safely delivering it would secure his family's financial future for years to come. By the second week, the weather broke, the sky turned the color of bruised iron, and the waves grew into towering walls of black water that threatened to swallow the ship whole. The Mary Celeste was battered relentlessly, her timbers straining under the immense pressure of the storm. Inside the cabin, Sarah Briggs clung to her young daughter, Sophia, trying to soothe her cries over the deafening roar of the wind and the terrifying thunder of waves crashing over the main deck. The pristine order of the ship began to fracture. Water began to seep through the seams of the wooden deck, creating sleek, treacherous surfaces everywhere. Captain Briggs spent hours at the wheel, his face frozen by the biting wind, his eyes strained as he stared into the blinding spray. The crew worked in darkness, navigating by the dam, flickering light of oil lanterns that swung violently from the overhead beams. It was during these chaotic hours that something subtle yet catastrophic began to happen deep with the cargo hold. The constant, violent rocking of the vessel caused the heavy yoke bearers to shift against one another. The friction was immense, and the silent danger of their cargo began to wake. On December 5, 1872, a British brigantine named the D. Gracia spotted the lone sail on the distant horizon. The captain of the D. Gracia, David Morehouse, was a close personal friend of Captain Briggs. They had even shared a farewell dinner in New York just days before setting sail. Morehouse noticed that the Mary Celeste was moving erratically, her sails torn and fluttering wildly in the wind like broken wings. She was drifting on a strange tack, entirely at the mercy of the current. Morehouse called out through his megaphone, but his voice was swallowed by the vast emptiness of the ocean. There was no response from the deck. No lookout stood at the bow. No helmsman guided the wheel. Sensing disaster, Morehouse ordered a small boarding party to row out to the drifting ship. As the small wooden rowboat approached the massive hull of the Mary Celeste, the men felt a heavy, suffocating silence hanging over the vessel. The only sound was the eerie, rhythmic slapping of the loose ropes against the wooden masts. When they finally climbed over the rail and stepped onto the deck, they found themselves in a ghost world. The boarding party worked through a nightmare of absolute abandonment. The sails were in poor condition, some completely blown away, yet the ship itself was thoroughly seaworthy. There was no sign of a violent struggle, no bloodstains on the wood, and no damage indicating a pirate attack or a mutiny. In the captain's cabin, the personal belongings of Sarah and little Sophia were neatly arranged. A toy lay on the floor, right where the child had dropped it. A sewing machine sat on the table, next to an upright vial of oil that hadn't even tipped over during the storms, proving the ship had not suffered a catastrophic capsizing. In the galley, the stoves were cold, but the food preparations were evident, as if the cook had walked away mid-sentence. However, when the men inspected the navigation room, they found the ultimate clue and the ultimate mystery. The ship's logbook lay open on the desk. The final entry was dated November 25th, 9 days prior. It placed the ship nearly 400 miles to the west, near the island of Santa Maria in the Azores. For 9 days, the Mary Celeste had sailed herself through treacherous, rocky waters, maintaining a perfect trajectory without a single human hand at the wheel. As the investigators dug deeper, they discovered that the ship's only lifeboat was missing. The main halyard, a thick rope used to hoist the sails, was broken and trailing in the water behind the vessel. Most shockingly, when they opened the cargo hold, a sharp, chemical stench filled the air. 9 of the 1,701 barrels of alcohol were completely empty, their contents having leaked into the bilge. This discovery gave birth to the most plausible yet terrifying theory of what happened in those final, desperate moments. The industrial alcohol, reacting to the intense heat and violent friction of the storm, had begun to leak and vaporize. The dark hold had transformed into a ticking time bomb filled with the invisible, highly explosive gas. Captain Briggs, fearing an imminent catastrophic explosion that would blow his family to pieces, made a fateful executive decision. He ordered an immediate evacuation. The crew frantically lowered the single lifeboat into the churning sea. In their blind panic, they left behind the logbook, their navigation tools, and their personal belongings. Briggs tied the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste, using the long main halyard rope, and tending to two behind the main ship at a safe distance until the toxic fumes cleared. It was a calculated risk that turned into an absolute disaster. As the 10 souls sat huddled in the tiny, fragile lifeboat, watching the massive silhouette of a Mary Celeste bounce on the waves, the Atlantic executed its final cruel twist. A sudden violent squall struck the area. The immense force of the wind caught the sails of the Mary Celeste, causing her to suddenly surge forward with massive momentum. The thick halyard rope, strained to its absolute limit, snapped with a sound like a gunshot. In a matter of seconds, the line of survival was severed. The terrified family and the crew watched in an absolute horror as their empty, beautifully seaworthy ship rapidly glided away from them, disappearing into the thick curtain of rain and fog, left with no food, no water, and no way to navigate. The tiny lifeboat was instantly at the mercy of the open ocean. They were swallowed by the vast, uncaring wilderness of the Atlantic, leaving behind an empty ship to wander the seas alone, carrying their secrets in her silent timbers. The story of the Mary Celeste remains an enduring monument to human vulnerability against the infinite scale of the sea. She was brought into port, sold, and sailed for years by superstitious crews who claimed she was cursed, until she was finally wrecked on a coral reef off the coast of Haiti. The bodies of Captain Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and the 7 brave sailors were never found. Their clothes, their diaries, their memories simply dissolved into history, leaving us to wonder how a family could be so completely erased from existence, while their home sailed on without them. The empty decks and silent cabins remind us that the ocean keeps its secrets buried deep within its dark, untraceable currents. If you are ready to explore the chilling files of history that mainstream science refuses to touch, hit that subscribe button right now. Keep your eyes on the horizon and never forget, reality has built-in errors. Sleep